Hi there, my name is Ted, and my wife and I started our wonderful little kitchen remodel this summer. And during the process of the remodel, we discovered that our water heater had a leak while we were ripping out the floors. And the water heater had a very small leak, it was a pinhole, basically. But the floor that was underneath it, as we were ripping it out, was all soaking wet and had been leaking into the other parts of the kitchen underneath the subfloor itself. So it was causing a whole lot of problems. So what do? We ripped out that water heater and we discovered that it would be cheaper plus more energy efficient and utilize the space better if we went with a tankless water tank. So we decided to purchase the AIDBAY Tankless water heater. It's a 3.5 gallons per minute. And I think it's a little more than that, mainly because of the fact that we were able to run about two appliances at the same time and never had to worry about it. We had our washing machine and dishwasher and then doing dishes as well, and was able to maintain heat. Now, there isn't a lot of reviews on this water heater, and I don't understand why, because it's actually a really, really cool water heater. Now, there are some negatives to it. One of them being is that it has a G1 adapters connections for the pipe adapters, and I'll show you that a little later. The fittings don't work with the NPT type of fittings, so special fittings that you're used in the United States with our water lines and gas lines and so on and so forth. So we had to buy those adapters. Now that added a little additional cost, about $18 more to the price of the water heater, but it still was definitely worth it. And you also had to purchase a gas flex tape and pipe flex tape. So those are little tapes that you wrap around it so that when you put the adapters on it, it seals it nice and tight, and so there's no residual leaks of any kind whatsoever. Now, we did this as a DIY, and we did it and hooked it up to the existing exhaust vents that were there from the previous water heater. And now we had to do it in a specific way and had to make sure that it fit in the appropriate spot. What I loved about this water heater is it came with the stainless exhaust pipe. Now, they don't talk about that in the description, but it did come with it, which is fantastic. It even came with the elbow. Now, I didn't have to use the elbow, but I did use the stainless pipe. And I actually took it up into the flute adapter that I had for the water heater, popped it on there, used some aluminum HVAC heat tape that can withstand up to, I think it was 2,800 degrees. So that's pretty hot. And so I wrapped it around there to create a nice fitting for it. Gave it a test. I did have to run a GFI, okay, a GFI plug. Now, different cities and different states have different codes, but in my city that I lived in, the plug had to, if the plug was within 2 feet of a water source, you have to have a GFI plug. So I put a GFI plug in there and hooked it up and made sure I had a solid, good ground. This water heater does need a good ground wire, otherwise it won't work that great. So I put a nice GFI receptacle there with a nice ground lead to it and mounted it, plugged it in. I added a softener and water filtration filter prior to the water heater. This helps the longevity of the water heater, especially, and even if you didn't go with the tankless, I strongly recommend that you put a water filter prior to the appliance. The main reason is because it keeps particles out of the water as it goes through the extruders. It also softens the water and removes of any type of calcium that is inside the water that could cause buildup inside of your water heater or even your tankless. And then also, it also just keeps your water nice and clean. It helps your appliances, your shower heads from developing calcium onto it. Same with your faucets and stuff like that. If I had an option to do a whole house water filter, I would have, but that's a little expensive and I didn't want to pay the plumber to do all that. So Again, like I said, mentioned before, this was completely DIY, so you can do this. It's not complicated. It's easy to hook up. The water heater fits in small spaces, and it does an excellent job. So that's my personal review on the AIDBAY water heater. It is really, really nice. I love that it's digital. I love that you can adjust the temperature. Now it isn't Celsius, but you know, it's not that hard. You can ask Siri or Google how to break it down. You know, not a killer. But I love that I can set the temperature and adjust it, and you can actually hear the different sections of the heat extruder. To, like, you'll hear it go on low power mode, where it just doesn't use so much gas when the water is nice and warm. It shows you the incoming temperature and the outgoing temperature, which is really, really nice. And then with the water, if you're using a lot of applications and it needs to push water through really fast, then you hear it fire up the second extruder. And if the water is really cold, it fires the third extruder. And now I will say it is a little noisy. And there's a reason why it's a little noisy. It has its own blower inside of it to extrude all the heat as fast as it can, which is really, really nice. So when we initially installed it and mounted it to a couple of 2x4s, we could hear the vibration of the wall, okay, coming from that water heater. It was vibrating, and you could hear it when it kicks on, you could hear it when it kicks off, and it was kind of like, I'm not really much of a fan of that. So what we did is we went and bought some rubber padding. Now you can use felt pads that you put on the bottom of chairs or little pads like that, but to isolate the vibrations and to limit the amount of vibration. So we put that on the back of the plate prior to screwing it into the wall. That way it would dampen the noise, and it did a fantastic job.